Salutations, the name's Cavill. So season 2 is wrapping up soon and it made me think, which contestant has done the best overall? To answer that question, we need to set some ground rules. Firstly, characters that are exclusive to only one season will be disqualified, with a few exceptions. This includes pickle, paper, pepper, salt, bomb, bow, tissues, cherries, trophy, cheesy, soap, liferin, clover, goo, floor, candle, bot, and silver spoon. Secondly, our remaining contestants will each gain 1 point for each episode they participate in without being eliminated. That'll give us our starting scores, which puts Balloon in an early lead, but Paintbrush isn't far behind. Going in order, we have Baseball, probably the most snubbed contestant of the whole series. The Arena of Death immediately poses a question: what do we do in King of the Hill type challenges where every contestant fails until only one is left standing? Obviously the winner gains a point, but does every other contestant lose a point? In my opinion, no, not unless the contestant fails in an especially humiliating way. Use this moment as an example. Pepper wouldn't lose a point for being hit with the rock, but Salt would for willingly jumping off. Does Baseball lose a point for trying to blitz Taco? Absolutely, I don't know what he thought would happen. Moving on to Season 2, things are finally looking up for Baseball as he wins the Captain's Challenge. However, being a team leader comes with a lot of responsibility, meaning Baseball will gain points depending on whether his team succeeds. He'll gain a point for episodes 1, 2, 5, and 6, while losing a point for episodes 4, 8, and 11. Not going to count episode 3 because Baseball was specifically barred. He then steals the show in episode 5 by blocking every single penalty shot, securing the team victory. This is when Baseball fades into the background, however, never again doing something particularly helpful or particularly futile. His problem as a character and as a contestant is his lack of initiative. Hell, look what I've covered so far. He won episodes 1 and 5 just cause he's fat, once due to his weight, once due to his largeness. Baseball's final score is 18, mostly because the Grand Slams performed well regardless of his personal involvement. If he weren't the team captain, that score would be closer to 12. Next, Knife, II's resident jerk. His strategy at the Arena of Death backfired tremendously, knocking himself out of the challenge. Then in the next episode, he operates the slingshot for his team, but the only person he gets across is Marshmallow, someone he killed in the beginning. In other words, he absolutely loses a point, despite Miphone giving him immunity. Side note, if a character gains immunity despite losing, I award them 1 point, meaning this episode balances out. In episode 5, he fails to stack his balls in time, and that's it for season 1. Could certainly have done better, but at least he wasn't Baseball. He opened season 2 by hitting his own teammate in dodgeball. I'm tempted to give this a failure, but Trophy was quite a liability. It was probably the right call. Then in episode 3, Knife is injured while biking, but ultimately he did pretty well despite that. This failure wasn't his. 5 episodes later, they visit Meeple headquarters and are confronted by Miphone 6 before Knife dispatches him. Now it turned out to be easy, so any character could have done this, but Knife is the only one bold enough to try. In the end, Knife has the same score as Baseball, which doesn't sound impressive, but he managed to avoid failure a surprising amount of times. The same can be said for Lightbulb, who started strong by winning the Captain's Challenge. This is definitely to her detriment, however, because Team Epic underperformed massively, losing episodes 2, 3, and 4. Then in episode 5, she was temporarily eliminated, but I'm not going to deduct points. It's not her fault the viewers can't spell. She'll miss out on 1 point, however, because Team Epic actually won this challenge, but Lightbulb wasn't there to help. The only team victory Lightbulb was present for came in episode 7, and she's eliminated 2 episodes later. Overall, Lightbulb has to be season 1's worst contestant. 3 team failures, 1 team victory, and 1 personal victory. Most episodes, she didn't even try to compete, which puts her on a level below Baseball. Hell, she only won the Captain's Challenge because Taco pushed her. Things change heavily when she wins the second Captain's Challenge and forms the Bright Lights. They win episodes 4 and 8 while losing episodes 1, 2, 5, and 6, which isn't a great ratio, but it's certainly better. For personal victories, Lightbulb provided the cookie pizza and applied pressure until Suitcase cracked. She also saved the show in episode 12, which I'll grant a point, but I'm gonna split it between her and Test Tube. In episode 13, the contestants are searching for gemstones, but Lightbulb finds hers independently. I'm gonna grant her a point because everybody else needed help. In terms of failure, she wastes a lot of time in episode 2. That's about it. There are episodes where she doesn't contribute, but none where she contributes negatively. She ends with a respectable 20.5, which goes to show that any contestant can turn things around. On a similar note, Nickel. He had an uneventful season 1 and not contributing to a single challenge, and I'm considering him to be eliminated in episode 5. Because his elimination was delayed, however, he managed to squeeze in one failure after falling into the elephant feces and costing the team a vital time. In Season 2, he also had a poor showing as he helps to scare Suitcase in Episode 6. He also pressures Suitcase to steal a battery, but that battery ends up in the hands of Lightbulb, so no points there. Lastly, in Episode 11, Nickel lets Suitcase decide the job that Balloon will do, which ends up costing them the challenge. This wasn't directly Nickel's fault, it was a team effort honestly, but he's getting a failure for instigating the entire situation. Season 3 is when Nickel finally hit his stride, saving the Mile High Pie and bluffing Miphone all the way to victory. 4 episodes later, Nickel wins the Inanimate SmackDown by a landslide after training Nickel Jr. into a killing machine. These are his only 2 victories in the series, which makes Season 3 leagues better than 1 and 2, but unfortunately, the failures ramp up at the same time. In Episode 3, Nickel abandons his team, not only ruining their offense plan, but getting his own team ambushed, losing 2 points for this one. 2 episodes later, Box gets injured, which causes the challenge to be cancelled. Ordinarily, I wouldn't deduct points for forcing a stalemate, but it was blamed that if this didn't happen, the Thinkers would have lost. I'm only removing half a point, however, because this injury was equal parts in Nickel, Tea Kettle, Test Tube, and Clover. 1 episode later, Nickel sabotages Balloon at the Laughing Challenge. I'm tempted to give Balloon this failure because he was probably gonna fail anyway, but ultimately it wasn't Nickel who threw in the towel. He then manages to keep it together for 9 episodes before mistaking a crossword puzzle for murder evidence. Lastly, Episode 9, title TBD. In the context of this video, this episode is an absolute doozy, so I'm going to save it for later. For now, Nickel's score is 25.5. Ultimately, he didn't do that much better than baseball, but he goes to show that for this video, avoiding elimination matters a lot more than winning challenges. Relevant to that is Nickel's rival, Balloon. He wins Season 1's Captain Challenge, and it goes far better for him than Lightbulb. He gains a point for episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, while losing a point for episode 6. He also had the idea to launch Taco into the lemon tree, which led to their victory in multiple episodes, but I'm only going to award 1 point because it's more so Taco's victory. He also dies in episode 4, but it really wasn't his fault. Pickle's just vengeful like that. He proceeds to win the prize of the ball stacking contest and be eliminated 2 episodes later. Balloon was surprisingly a sleeper hit in Season 1. The closest he came to a personal failure was missing the World Tour. Things don't go nearly as well in Season 2 due to failing the Captain's Challenge. Balloon has no failures and only 1 success, as he adds the flour to Soap's pizza. Now ordinarily, adding a flour to a pizza would be detrimental, but this pizza was already awful. The only points came because Puffball loves flowers. Most people would consider episode 11 a failure for dropping the bucket, but honestly, I can't. Balloon had too many teammates conspiring against him. Season 3 has his winning streak return as he gains immunity in episode 3 and wins episode 13 with a base jumping. Then in episode 16, he proves a lot of worth from jet propulsion to friendship speeches. 2 points in the bag. Things aren't sunshine and rainbows, however, as the flower goes much worse on the Mile High Pie, and his Inanimate was murdered before the SmackDown started. That'll leave him with a whopping 43 points. It'll be hard for any contestant to compete with that, but Paintbrush comes pretty close. They start out quite poorly by knocking themselves off the podium at the Arena of Death and presenting a plastic tree at the Christmas contest. In Season 2, I'm tempted to give Paintbrush a point for being the only cleaner on his team, but ultimately this challenge was pure RNG, which is why I've been ignoring this episode. No, Paintbrush's only true success comes in episode 11, when their height is pivotal for reaching the key. The team then needs to hit the target with 3 balls. Paintbrush landed the first hit, Fan landed the second, and Test Tube landed the third. Fan and Test Tube both needed Paintbrush's moral support, however, so I'm going to award 2 points. They dropped the ball 1 episode later, however, after accidentally destroying the entire contest and being eliminated for it. Easy come, easy go. Season 3 goes even worse, as Paintbrush doesn't have a single success or failure to speak of. They lose 1 point for missing the re-entry contest, but that's it. Not good. Paintbrush's final score is 30. They're unique for making it 2/3 into every season, but ultimately accomplishing very little. Marshmallow's absence turned Paintbrush into a powerhouse, but otherwise it's been pure failure. Speaking of whom, Marshmallow had a great Season 1, winning 3 challenges in a row. She defies gravity at the Guacamole Challenge, finds the biggest dash of candy, and sacrifices Apple so she can cross the mud pit first. She then proceeds to rescue Miphone, ergo save Inanimate Insanity, ergo gain 1 extra point. She certainly has her blunders, however, as her gravity manipulation leaves much to be desired in episodes 1 and 12. Then in episode 5, Nickel sabotages her ball stack, and in episode 11, Paper hooks her at the last second. In episode 9, she instigates an argument that wastes the entire challenge, but she's only losing half a point because Apple and Paintbrush are equally at fault. Lastly, she called everyone an idiot and was promptly eliminated for it, definitely losing a point for this one. In Season 2, Marshmallow is launched to Mars, which becomes the entire challenge, and the opposing team won. Marshmallow didn't directly contribute to her team's failure, but still deducting a point because she created the challenge in the first place. She later abandons the show, which I consider a failure, leaving her with a final score of 18.5. Overall, Marshmallow is a great example of how the show changed over time, in a way that's detrimental to this list. Season 1 was about watching very basic people being put through the ringer by brutal challenges. You didn't know much about the contestants, you just laughed at the chaos they were forced to experience. Season 2 became more character-driven and the challenges took a massive backseat. Hell, by the midway point it becomes very nebulous what even qualifies as a challenge. Marshmallow herself stopped contributing to the challenges, but she wasn't missing from the series and made a whole video about how much she contributed to the show itself. There are 2 points I'm trying to make right now. 1. A character's score says literally nothing about their importance on Inanimate Insanity. 2. Season 1 contestants have a massive advantage on this list because the contests were taken more seriously by the show itself. But you know what also wasn't taken seriously? Apple, Marshmallow's rival. She has 2 successes in Season 1, neither being traditional challenges. She wins the joining challenge through attrition and the tiebreaker challenge through luck. The failures, though, are plentiful, as she collects garbage at the candy challenge and performs the worst dive at Crappy Cliff. She also fails the quicksand challenge and wastes the Christmas challenge, making her entire team devolve into bickering. Not good. This leaves her with a final score of 11, because in Season 2 she doesn't partake in a single contest. I mean, maybe Marsh on Mars if you squint at it, but not really. Next. Woohoo! Taco, the first character who technically doesn't meet my beginning criteria. But I have to talk about Taco, she partakes in 2/3 of her episodes, the best ratio of any contestant. She fails Crappy Cliff, the ball stacking, and the final gauntlet. You could argue for the candy collecting or the tile divide, but in those situations, everybody else did just as badly as she did. On the other side, she dominates the lemon collecting, the arena of death, the slingshot challenge, the quicksand cross, the inanimate smackdown, the contestant roundup, and she gets the least votes in the penultimate poll. Some would argue that since Pickle is helping her with most of these, she should only receive half credit, but then you remember that Taco is manipulating Pickle into doing it, and nah, full credit. She's also the first person who expresses support for Pickle's terrible tree, and without that support, the team likely wouldn't have agreed to present it. Her team then proceeded to win, so I'm gonna award half a point. I'm also gonna remove 1 point for reasons that are a bit unorthodox. Taco obviously didn't make it into Season 2, but she began manipulating Microphone to give her half the million. Microphone proceeded to ditch her, however, meaning this will constitute Taco's last failure on Inanimate Insanity. Final score, 21.5. Taco is a perfect example of how malpractice works, because she won a shocking amount of contests considering how well she played the role of a fool. If she made it into Season 2 or won the final gauntlet, she'd be the winner, no doubt about it. But she's a bad actor and her sins caught up with her, landing her only in the middle tier. In the upper echelon, we have Inanimate Insanity's first victor, OJ. He knocked out half the opposing team at the Arena of Death, gained immunity at the candy collecting, and his strategy dominated the tile divide. That's about it. Paintbrush claims that OJ was responsible for winning the Christmas contest, but I can't find anything linking this tree to OJ specifically. However, at the end, Team Chicken Leg was allowed to choose 1 eliminated contestant to join their team. They proceeded to argue because Salt wanted to choose Pepper, but OJ wanted to choose Paper, so Miphone let the viewers decide instead. The viewers then chose Paper, so I'm gonna award 1 bonus point, especially since he and OJ then formed an alliance. When it comes to failures, OJ is a cautious person, so he mostly stays in the black. He did technically lose the final segment of War de Guacamole, but it's not his fault Pickle lost the baton or Marshmallow destroyed the boardwalk, so I'm not deducting a point. In the double-digit desert, he lost the immunity to Bomb, and he lost the first round of the Inanimate Smackdown. Not too shabby, all things considered. He then proceeded to win the final gauntlet, meaning he won the show itself, which I'm going to award 10 points for. This puts him on the fast track to winning the video, but he hits a hurdle when he's the only contestant to skip Season 2 and go straight to Season 3. Here, OJ's track record takes a nosedive as he doesn't even arguably have a single victory. He's then eliminated after only 4 episodes. Now ordinarily I don't consider being eliminated to be a failure. Missing out on all the future episodes is enough of a punishment. This time I'll make an exception, however, because episode 4 was entirely devoted to the contestants debating who they want to eliminate. In the end they chose OJ despite his arguments, so I'm deducting 1 point, and it's not the only point he'll lose because of this. He proceeds to leave Indefinite Island, meaning he missed both rejoin challenges, leaving him with a final score of 30. His score could be a lot higher in Season 3, but we can't deny how much he accomplished in Season 1. Hotel OJ is probably the show's biggest staple. Moving on to Season 2, the first contestant who meets our criteria is... Box, I suppose. He's Box. No, he's a box. He doesn't do anything. 8. Moving on. Yin-Yang is quite the interesting run on the show, but I mean, considering the concept of Yin-Yang, he kinda had to. Yang's strategy at the triathlon may have been unethical, but it was certainly effective, and it's their only win for Season 2. Then in episode 1, they knock themselves off the iceberg, in episode 4, they eat their own team's pizza, and in episode 5, they kick 2 goals into their own team's net. A lot of problem player energy. Then Yin murdered Do, which most people would consider a failure, but I beg to differ. Do would have added literally nothing to the team. Taking him out of the game before Mifone could recover him was probably a tactical move. Season 3 was a massive turning point, however, as Yin and Yang began learning to coincide peacefully, and were granted 6 immunities from it. They win episode 1 by getting half the thinkers through the tube, in episode 6 they work together to avoid laughter, and in episode 13 they get Candle eliminated by scheming with Cabby. Pretty good showing, especially since there are no failures to list. They end with a cool 27. Yin-Yang is a character I'm excited to make an analysis for, and this video perfectly displays why. Next, Fan, a character who displays the opposite. Now, Fan is obviously a good character, but he's literally defined by his refusal to participate. In episode 3, he tricks Mike into helping him, but that's as far as his success goes. In episode 8, he refuses to give up his egg to win the challenge, and in episode 13, he gets so distracted that he's instantly eliminated. I wish I could say season 3 was an improvement, but no, he only makes it 1 episode. Then he misses both rejoin contests, so yeah, pretty bad. His final score is 10, which is pathetic. It'd literally be higher if you missed season 3 altogether. Fan is the first major example of why we needed to set criteria in the beginning, because a lot of contestants fall under this specific umbrella. That does not include Microphone, however. Someone who worked with Taco, ergo, transcends the criteria. She starts strong by single-handedly dominating the dodgeball challenge, but things go downhill quickly as she fumbles the triathlon. She then forces a stalemate in episode 10, which isn't exactly a failure, but it does result in Nicole's elimination, so I'm counting it. Then in episode 11, we're given a predicament when she sabotages her teammate Balloon. Do I deduct a point despite the fact she accomplished her goal? On one hand, I deducted points when Yin-Yang did this, on another hand, Yin-Yang got eliminated for it. I'm gonna play it safe and grant no points while deducting none either. Comment how you'd rule this one. Microphone's motives are so topsy-turvy that she really doesn't fit on this list, so I'd love to hear some perspectives. In the next episode, she loses a point because Knife catches her cheating, and then comes episode 14, the big one. She successfully rescues Fan, but then quits the show, leaving her with only 12 points. Things were never going to end well for a contestant exclusive to season 2, but Mike did pretty well all things considered. She was nothing like Taco, but maybe that's for the best. Speaking of the best, Test Tube. She's somewhere up there. She plays it pretty safe in season 2, starting strong by building her team's rocket single-handedly. Sure, her team lost, but no one else did anything worth a damn. She's getting the point. In episode 11, Lightbulb loses their bucket, so Test Tube becomes the bucket, securing herself another point. Then, in episode 14, she nearly rescues Fan as Microphone nabs him in the last second. I don't know if it's fair to call this her fault, but I have to make a call here, so she's losing a point. Overall, she had a pretty good season 2, even if she was more of a support character. Things go south in season 3 when she plays a part in Box's injury and saves the Thinkers from elimination. This is Test Tube's only interaction until, drumroll please, title TBD. When it comes to failure, this is without a doubt the most dense episode of the entire series, even if we aren't talking about any season 3 characters. The plot is that each team must produce a cartoon, and unlike most episodes, each character is given a precise role to fill. Due to Paintbrush, the Thinkers cartoon was overdrawn with no budget, budget, while Yin-Yang caused the Pinkers cartoon to go over budget with no artist. Then Balloon took on way too much responsibility, Nickel didn't bother reading the script, and in the end they lost $10 million. You could argue that Test Tube succeeded due to leading the team and winning by pure luck, but if AOJ doesn't count, then this certainly doesn't. Everyone gets a failure for this episode, reducing Nickel to 24.5, Balloon to 42, Paintbrush to 29, Yin-Yang to 26, and Test Tube to 12. What an absolute mess this episode was. I blame Saberspark. And speaking of blame, Blueberry. If you get it, you get it. Blueberry refused to participate in episode 1, and hence was the first contestant eliminated. Then, due to the laws of object shows, he rejoined in episode 15 by scamming MePhone and winning immunity to boot. That'll be 2 points. The next episode, Blueberry competes like a demigod. However, why'd it have to be Achilles? He accidentally makes oatmeal raisin cookies, meaning the island goes up in flames and he's instantly eliminated. What a way to go. His final score is 1, which hopefully showcases why Season 3 characters are pretty much banned from this list. The only other exception will be Season 3's victor, Cabby. She gets her entire team to the finish line in episode 1 by becoming what she calls the Cab. Note this because it comes back in episodes 16 and 19. In episode 2, she conspires to have Fan eliminated, but unlike Mike and Balloon, Fan actually poses a threat to Cabby, so I'm giving her the point. In episode 10, she aces the rejoin contest, and in episode 13, she works with the Yin-Yang to outplay Nickel's alliance. Then in episode 14, she wins the challenge. Not much more to it, it was just a race through their own trauma. Finally, Season 3 skips the final gauntlet and has the penultimate poll as the finale, where Cabby manages to grab the majority of votes. And with that, Season 3 was hers, add 10 to the counter. As for failures, her Inanimate didn't make it into the SmackDown, and that's it. Her temporary elimination definitely hurt her starting score, but otherwise, I don't think Season 3 could have gone much better for her. Final score, 31. I did not think she would outperform OJ. That'll leave us with these scores, and I'm willing to admit there are definitely some surprises in here. By my completely subjective metrics of success, Balloon wins by a landslide. Cabby would need to win another season just to catch up. Honestly, giving the show an overview, it doesn't really feel like Balloon deserves it, considering he was treated as such a plague in Season 2. Do you think my metrics should be adjusted to give people like Balloon, OJ, or Baseball a fair shake? Comment below, this is a discussion I'd love to open. For now, what did we learn from all this? For one thing, the rate at which Inanimate Insanity takes the contest seriously looks something like this. Most who were in Season 1 peaked in Season 1, and as a result, many of the fan favorites are absolute failures in terms of contest performance. When rewatching Season 2 with that understanding, some things started to click, especially in regards to people like Nickel and Paintbrush. But who would I give the award to? After much consideration, Box.